Hi everyone, I am Katja Kaine, creator of The Novel Factory and young adult fantasy writer. This is the latest in our series of author interviews where I chat to published authors to get insights on how they think, write and succeed in order to help you along on your writing journey. If you've ever wondered how professional writers get from blank page to finished manuscript, or what a normal day looks like for a professional author, then you have come to the right place. Today, I am so pleased to be talking to Alex Atkinson, who is the author of the Spooksmith series of comedy, mystery, horror books for middle grade. The first in the series, Spooksmith's Investigate, The Cinder Man, is out now, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Waterstones describes it as a brilliantly spooky new horror mystery series. It features a brother and sister who live in a funeral parlour but don't believe in ghosts. That is until the sister, Indigo, knocks over an old urn, accidentally releasing the Cinder Man, a terrifying ash monster who will smother their town in ashes and turn everyone into zombies unless they can stop him by sunset. Alex was a winner in the 2022 Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators Undiscovered Voices competition, was shortlisted for the Right Mentor Children's Novel Award 2021, and was Blackwell's Book of the Month for Spooksmiths last October. And Spooksmiths has just made the top 10 for the Federation of Children's Book Groups Children's Book Award. Alex, congratulations on all your huge achievements, and thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that lovely intro.
So I've just finished The Cinderman myself, and I thought it was fabulous, absolutely hilarious, with a great mystery plot and so much heart. I devoured it in 3 days. It was so easy to read, and I am sure my daughters are going to love it. As I was reading it, I was also thinking that it was a masterclass in how to write a novel for children. The setup was so brilliant, the children sound so authentic, and the pieces of the puzzle are all laid out really masterfully. There are deeper themes running through the book around grief, coming to terms with loss, and the importance of family. But none of that gets in the way of it being utterly hilarious. And I have to say that Frank the Pheasant had me laughing out loud more than once. So I really recommend... Oh, I've got it here as well, and I forgot to bring it up. This is the book. I recommend everyone get their own copy, especially if you have school kids or if you are writing middle grade. Anyway, now let's get started picking Alex's brain. So I thought we could start at the beginning, and you can tell us a little bit about the early days of your journey as a writer, what made you want to be a writer, how you got started, and some of the challenges that maybe you faced early on.
Yeah, so I think what got me hooked on stories and telling them and reading them was my dad. So he was a really big storyteller and lover of make-believe. And when my brother and I were little, he would always tell us the most amazing bedtime stories. And it used to drive my mum mad because they were very excitable stories. And he would often start them by chasing us around the house with a game of murder in the dark. So that would involve him turning off all the lights in the house, and he'd put up towels across the door. He'd hammer them in, and we would just literally run around trying to catch each other. So we would be screaming. Often my brother and I would end up in tears because we crashed into a wall or each other. And that would be sort of the preamble to the story.
Perfect. Just what you want just before bedtime.
Yeah, my mum loved it. So sort of sweating, we'd sort of pile into bed, and we'd have the dogs on the end of the bed as well. And then he'd start the stories. And his stories would always be disaster stories, usually, or sort of zombie attack stories, or, perfect for just before bed. But we loved them. And they were so exciting, and we just really, really lived them, because they would always be about a brother and a sister who would be a similar age to me and my brother. And there'd always be animals to rescue. I'm afraid all the adults died, but the children and the animals would always get away. And I think that stuck in my brain. And they tend to be the kind of stories that I like writing.
And who was he making them up as he went along?
Just make it up.
Wow.
And yeah, he was really, really good at it, and we completely bought into it. And yeah, we really lived them. It was best.
Yeah. It sounds like it really runs in your family, clearly, the storytelling gene. Oh, that sounds brilliant. And so that was sort of hearing those stories and feeling immersed. That's what made you want to give that to other people as well, presumably.
It did, but I sort of forgot about that. when I grew up and, got sort of a proper job and things. And it wasn't until I started thinking about having kids of my own, then I started thinking about my own childhood, and it just all came back to me. Yeah, it just felt really natural, I suppose. Yeah.
And so when you decided that you did want to do writing and try and, when you started, did you immediately say, right, I'd quite like to get published, or was it just for fun to begin with? What were the early days like and the challenges?
Well, the early days, I'd been made redundant and I was pregnant with my first child. And I just thought, I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to throw myself into this. And so I joined a Curtis Brown course, and I think I'd written a chapter. So it was quite a strong move, but I decided this was going to be, it's going to be a career change.
Yeah. Go bold or go home.
Exactly. So I started this course and it was amazing. And it was run by Catherine Johnson, and she is fantastic. But I quickly realised that everyone else on the course was sort of quite a lot further along than I was. And so I did feel a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, but I learned so much from it. And then from doing that course, I found Scooby, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and Write Mentor. And I sort of realised from doing the Curtis Brown course that I knew nothing. And so I just, when I could, started doing more courses, made writer friends, managed to sort of build critique groups with other writer friends. And it just sort of moved on from there, really.
Nice. And what did you find hardest to begin with?
I think the hardest thing is the rejection. Obviously, well, not obviously, but for me as a writer, as soon as I'd finished writing a story, I would send it out to agents, sure that the world was going to love it. And to be honest, my early stories were really, really rubbish. And agents ghost you. If I did get a reply, it would be a form rejection. And it's really hard, but you just pick yourself up and you carry on. And I sort of, the rejections got better as I wrote more. So I'd start to get personalised rejections. And so I knew I was making progress. Yeah. And it just sort of improved from there. But I think that was the hardest thing, was the keeping going when you're still trying to learn and you're not necessarily getting a lot back, but actually those rejections are telling you you need to work harder, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you that this not getting anything back and not feeling like you really are getting anywhere or improving. But, in most cases, people are improving if you keep writing and you keep doing it. And I completely agree with you. Those personalised rejections, I mean, I've spoken to writers who have had those personalised rejections and they're still quite depressed about it. And I'm like, no, you should be excited. You should be celebrating. That's a really incredible sign that you are, getting closer. So I think that's really important. And I also, so I think when I started, I assumed that I would have to get at least 100 rejections before I got anywhere. So I was ready for that. And I thought I'm bulletproof. But then I went past 100 and then it really started to hurt because I'm still getting these rejections. And I thought that actually I should be getting somewhere by now. But, I was getting somewhere, but I was also still getting rejections.
I think you're very brave to count. I didn't count. I'd bin them as well, like the...
You don't stick them on the wall like some people as like a kind of badge of honor.
I'd mourn that book because you knew that was it. It had its shot, and no one's gonna love it now. And then I'd sort of sulk probably for a week or two, and then get on with something else.
Carry on. Yeah.
Okay,
so let's talk about Spooksmith. So what inspired you to write this particular book?
I think I've got lots of ideas came to me for this book, but I think the main one was when I was little. So probably from when I was born up until about the age of 17, I lived with my parents and my brother down this long lane, sort of a couple of miles out of a village. And it was up a very steep hill. And if it snowed really heavily, we'd get cut off. And I loved it as a kid because it either meant we couldn't get to school, or if it wasn't, the weather wasn't too bad, we could sledge. Like my mum would take a sledge and pull us down the hill to school. It was brilliant. And it got me thinking about, what if it wasn't snow? What if it was ash? And I just started imagining this sort of cut off world, and it grew from there. And I was like, oh, where's the ash going to come from? And then I was like, oh, what if there's an urn? And yeah, and it just all built from there, really. I think that's yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And this idea of being cut off as well and sort of smothered, and yeah, that all works really well.
Yeah.
And so is the Cinder Man your invention, or is there so there's no, because it felt so authentically like it was drawn from, mythology.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's what I wanted. But no, as far as I know, there is no
Oh, right. Yeah.
I sort of got I was just trying to sort of build in all the ash and the dirt, and so I started thinking about mines and sort of the background to his story as well. So,
yeah. I'd like to talk more about his character, but maybe we can talk about that when we get into the nuts and bolts stuff. So tell us then about how you got your agent and book deal.
Yeah, well, that was quite long-winded. I don't know if most people's are, but mine was. So I met my lovely agent, Lena Langley, who is the North Literary Agency. I met her with book before Spooksmith, so The Lord of the Hat. And I did a one-to-one with her, and she really liked it, but not enough to sign me. So I hadn't written Spooksmiths at that point, and it was just called The Cinder Man. And I pitched it to her, and she said, oh, go away and write that. So I was like, okay, I couldn't work out if she was just being nice.
So hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. And wanted to, give me some hope and not completely crush my dreams. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go away and write it. But at the same time, The Lord of the Hat, I got in the UV anthology with you, which is where we met. And I thought, The Lord of the Hat, maybe I'll find another agent. And so I was busy trying to query that, and I was trying to write The Cinder Man. Mm-hmm. So it took a little while for The Lord of the Hat to die a short
I enjoyed the opening of that so much as well. I was really gutted when it didn't come to full fruition.
Yeah, so I kept pushing with that, and I probably should have left that alone earlier. But then I started to focus on the Cinder Man, and I got some mentoring help through Right Mentor. They do a school mentoring program, and I was lucky enough to get picked for that. So they really helped me polish the Cinder Man, and then they do an agent showcase at the end. And I put the Cinder Man into that, and I got quite a lot of interest, but no one went for it. And I sent it to Lena, and I heard nothing, and I was gutted because I was like, I thought really well, and this is the book that you said you'd like the idea of. And she called me between Christmas and New Year.
Right.
And I'm so sorry, it got lost in her inbox, and she was reading it at the airport. It had kept her up all night, and she wanted to offer me representation, like right before New Year, and I was like squealing inside, trying to play it calm.
Yeah, play it cool, of course.
Yeah, of course.
If you like.
Yeah, I've had so many offers. Yeah. Anyway, it was brilliant. So that was how I finally signed with her.
Amazing. And was it a long... Sorry, I talked over you in that bit. What was that?
No, it was very exciting, even though I was trying to play it cool.
Yes, I know. I exactly know the feeling. And then was it how was your sub journey? Was that quite quick, or was that painful, or?
That was quite quick. So we worked on the book a bit together. So I did some more edits on it. She gave me some notes, and I did some edits on it. And then I think we went on submission in July, which with hindsight is probably not the best time to go on submission, because it seems the whole of the publishing world disappears for 2 months.
Oh, right, I see.
But we did hear back from Usborne quite quickly.
Right.
And I signed with them September or October time.
Amazing. Well, huge congratulations again.
What was yours? Did you get an agent after UV?
I had a similar thing to you with the book that I got into UV with. I had loads of interest, and no offers. And I was kind of like, oh, come on, like what do you need? What do you want from me? And then it was a lot longer, I think. So I wrote a different book. I also I did a course with Golden Egg. I had an editor there, so the sort of equivalent of the mentoring that you had, who really helped me get the book into shape in a way that I just couldn't have done on my own. And then they helped me with the subbing as well to agents. But again, even with that, like the first few that got it rejected it. And I was just like, here we go again. But I actually held off subbing to my favorite, like my dream agent because I didn't want to do that right away in case the sub package wasn't right. So I waited, and then we subbed to some other people, and then I started getting offers. And as soon as I started getting offers, I was like, send it to Maddie. And so we sent it to her, and so she accepted, which was just like, I couldn't believe it, because she genuinely was like the one that I wanted. So she offered rep. I did the whole thing of going like, I think I basically like, she sent me an example contract, and I printed it out, signed it, scanned it, and sent it back. And I was like, I've done it. And she was like, that's just for you to look at. We're going to do this digitally. And I'm like, okay, just, you don't want them to change their minds, right? So you're just like, okay. So I did that. And then, similarly, after like 14 years to get an agent, between agent and book deal was like really fast. So she also helped me through a few edits. And then we went on sub, I think, in the period before Christmas, but before everyone goes off for Christmas. So that she said, basically, we need to do it October, November or something like that, or we can't do it until it's the new year. Yeah, and then it went on preempt in the end, because a few different people were taking it to their acquisitions teams. And and Puffin just came in and was like, we want it, and we're going to give you some money. And and it was just, I was in a daze, total daze. Okay, so back to you. So what was it like publishing your first book?
Yeah, it was very, very exciting. Like, honestly, nothing beats seeing your book in a bookshop. I mean, it's particularly magical. It is also quite terrifying. And I think that's not the seeing your book in a bookshop. That's like totally amazing. But I think sort of the self-promotion and the having to put yourself out there. So, being asked to record like a quick little author video for something, or the school visit, and even just going into shops or libraries and just saying hi, introducing yourself, you're sort of pushing yourself, I suppose. And I feel I am, well, like, so self-promotion just makes me go, oh, but I've had to get over that and get better at it. I think that's the thing I've found hardest. Actually, now I love doing the school visits.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, because I was also kind of terrified of the idea of doing school visits. I don't know whether I'm going to be asked to do that, because my book's YA, and I don't know whether you go in for the older children. Yeah, but I recently did watch an excellent webinar by the Society of Authors, actually, on school visits, and she made it sound so exciting and interesting. So now I'm really fascinated and quite interested in this idea of going in to really find out how it's landing, how the book is landing with kids, and whether they're really, whether they're taking it completely differently to how you thought. And also, having the chance to get their feedback and see what they think about things as well as the book. So have you been finding those school visits?
Yeah, so I love them. The kids are always so funny, and they've been endlessly enthusiastic so far. And often when you go in, they haven't read the book. So I always sort of pitch it to them as though they haven't, and sort of say, this is kind of the thing you can expect, and, give them the most exciting but they're just so funny, the stuff they come out with and the questions that they ask. And they actually give me quite a lot of inspiration for new characters.
I bet.
You are actually taking quite a lot from it, as well as, you're giving, but you're also getting stuff back. It is almost like market research, almost.
Yeah, totally.
Excited about. And also some of their characters, like some of them are just so funny that you think, oh, I've got to put that into a character at some point. So yeah, I get really nervous about doing them every single time, but once I'm there, I really enjoy it.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm kind of semi looking forward to to it now. Okay, so let's move on to the nuts and bolts then. So I'd like to hear, or I'd love to hear a bit about your writing process. Do you do a lot of planning? How do you develop your stories? And yeah, how do you get from blank page to finished manuscript?
I think the way I develop stories has changed a lot as I've become more experienced. So I began by being a complete pantser, and I think for me anyway, it wasted a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of disappear off down on tangents and down rabbit holes that I were not really relevant to the story. But that's what happens with me if I don't plan. So I'm definitely a planner now.
Huh.
And Save the Cat, actually. I love a bit of Save the Cat. And I just have that in the back of my head. Yes.
On my desk all times.
You've got to hit that midpoint. You've got to, what is it? Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah.
All those little points are just playing in my head. And if something isn't working with the manuscript, I often find I've missed one of those key points. So I'm definitely a planner now, but I'm not an Excel spreadsheet planner. No, I can't do it. I have Post-it notes.
Yeah.
And I'm very messy. And then I will put together a Word document at some point when the mess becomes too much. And that tends to be sort of how I plan.
And so do you sort of have like a rough, like an extended synopsis kind of plot structure, and then you'll use that when you're actually writing the novel?
And sometimes I will change it, or a certain bit I'll find actually won't work. But it's nice to just have that to hang things off.
Yeah.
So I don't disappear off down a rabbit hole or, waste too much time on a certain scene that isn't actually going anywhere. It's just because I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah. Well, I've always been like a really confirmed planner, but recently I've been thinking like, I'm not sure it's helping me because I plan everything, but then I end up changing so much anyway. But honestly, I dread to think what it would be like if I didn't plan. But actually, I don't think I could. Like, if I don't know where it's going, I can't write because I don't know where it's going. So for me, it's not really an option. Okay, and do you find you do many drafts then? Do you end up redrafting a lot?
No, not now. Now I've started planning, nowhere near as much. So I'll probably, because I have that structure to hang everything off, it just makes it so much easier and quicker.
Yeah.
So I'll probably do 2 or 3 drafts before I show my agent, but it could have been like, I don't know, 10 in the early.
That sounds amazing. I'm so jealous. I'm on like draft 6 at the moment of my current one, and I'm like, no, it's not ready.
You're writing YA, so that's longer.
Yes. It is longer, and there's a lot of complicated things going on.
Does make it harder. So with middle grade, I can, just about get it all into some vague shape by sort of the 3rd draft. And then I send it to my agent who, sorry, Lena, but I kind of pretend it's just my first draft. I'm like, oh, here it is. It's such a mess. Hoping she'll go to me, oh, it's amazing. I can't believe it's your first draft. She's never said that. So she often comes back with loads more notes, but they're always really, really useful. And then we go through those together and I redraft it, and then I send it to my lovely editor, Sarah at Usborne.
Does she normally have many more changes for you at that point, or it's pretty much done then?
No, so then we do 3 rounds of edits.
Okay.
And ending with some copy edits.
I mean, I think that is the thing, that if you work to something with a lot of structure, then at least you're not doing major structural edits at that point. Like, I've had some structural edits at each stage, but what they've generally said to me is, all the kind of stages are there, the main points are there, so you don't need to restructure it. And that, I think that is a huge advantage to working with something like Save the Cat or Hero's Journey or something like that, because you just, you hit all of those beats. Okay, so we've talked about plot. So how do you keep track of like the mystery and seeding the clues, and how do you not get lost and forget what you've told the reader and what you haven't, that kind of thing? Do you have any techniques?
Usually me writing it, and then either on a read through I'll spot oh, that was in my head and I didn't actually write it down. Or someone else notices, oh, by the way, forgotten to say, how they came by that key. Or
Yes.
you're like, I think those points tend to develop the more drafts I do.
Yeah.
The early drafts, I often, it may have been in the early draft and then I'll edit it down. So I often find I lose stuff in an edit sometimes. And I think if I was more organised and maybe had an Excel spreadsheet, that would be all right. But I can't do it. That, feels too organised.
Well, if it doesn't work for you, then having an Excel spreadsheet is just somewhere else for it to not have the right information.
Oh yeah, and I think that's what would happen. Always makes it in there, but I think maybe that's the bit that takes me longest, getting everything in the right order.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think what you said about, other people's eyes, I mean, that's just invaluable, isn't it? Because they will say, oh, you've only done this in your head. You need to put this on the page. Yeah. And I think the read throughs as well. I found it really interesting when I realized that if I just sat down and just did it, I could do a full read through in a day or two. Whereas in my head before, I'd always been, it's going to take me at least a week, maybe 2 weeks to read it through. But if you really do just do that and nothing else, you can get it done quickly enough that it is all still in your head so you can remember those things.
I'll either get the, like the computer voice to read it out.
Oh, yes, you do that.
I find that quite useful. The voices are quite computery. Or I have to print it out.
Oh, yes. I have to print it out.
On the screen. And then you can spot so much more, or I can.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's like reading a different book when I've printed it out. There's stuff that is invisible to me on the screen.
Right.
Oh, I remember the other thing I was going to say, which was with all the proofing and all the different sort of edits you go through with different people and things being changed, it makes me think that in the past, I've read books and I've seen a typo. And I just think, how could it have gone through so many different stages of proofreading and still had the typo? And now I'm like, oh, that's because it was introduced after all of those drafts have happened. And now that's really, for me, that's a really interesting insight to say that hasn't got through all of them. It's a new one.
Yeah. And it's really frustrating when you stop. I remember when my proof copies went out, I was like, oh, and they were proof copies. So that there's going to be mistakes in them because they haven't been through all those rounds at that point. But I was really quite stressed because I spotted a few errors and I had actually by that point sort of changed some things. But you're just like, it's gone.
Yeah, but I think you just have to accept imperfection at the end of the day. Okay, and so can we talk about characters then? How do you develop your characters? Because I think that is one of the biggest strengths of the book as well, like the Cinderman with his backstory, Chuckles, who I was really scared about and then turned out to be hilarious, and Frank the pheasant. Love Frank the pheasant. So tell us about how you create your characters.
I think it is really important for them to have sort of a whole backstory and a whole life, even if you don't ever put much of that on the page. So I think I pretty much interview them all. So, favorite colors, they have favorite food, you have people they like, things that they don't, all of that.
That's fascinating. And do you write that all down, or do you just do that mentally?
And often I'll do Google searches because I want to get an idea of what they look like as well. So I find that really useful. And I wish I could draw, but I can't. So I do tend to create like little mood boards for the main characters. And I'll actually, cut things out of magazines or print something out because I think I am quite visual and I really like to be able to picture everything, the places as well. The same for the sort of the settings as for the characters. I really need to be able to picture it and have like little prompts.
And are any of them I guess they must be inspired by, people in real life with the brother and sister, perhaps by yourself and your brother?
Yeah, definitely inspired by me and my brother and our relationship. And then from watching my two kids, I also have a girl and a boy, and it's quite amazing what they can fight about, really. And they get on brilliantly, And they do love each other, but they are, yeah, how can they wind each other up? It's impressive.
Yeah, no, I get, because I have two daughters as well, and that very much resonates with me. Like, how can you argue over that? And yeah, that really, the authenticity of that relationship really came out to me in the book, and like the way that they just like niggle at each other, but you can still tell that they love each other, and obviously that like develops, and the appreciation. I thought that was a really strong part of the book. Okay, so what do you find most difficult about writing or about being an author?
I think it is the uncertainty. So you never. So I got a 2-book deal, and now I'm about to deliver like my second or third draft of the second book, and then obviously I'm out of contract. Then I'll need to start generating more ideas and more stories. Yeah, it's just quite unsettling. I don't think you're ever completely comfortable, because you're always, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm always like, what's next? And it is very hard to plan into the future, because, you have these quite short-term contracts just for a book or maybe 2. So I think that's probably the hardest part.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how the goalposts always seem to be moving, and you always feel like, even though you get success, then you feel like someone else might be more successful. And it's kind of really important to just remind yourself that, that where you are is amazing, and,
Yeah.
and that we do it because we love writing as well.
Exactly. You have to remind yourself to enjoy it, and to keep creating, because it's fun.
Yeah, which I suppose brings me on to the next question, which is, what is your favorite thing about being a writer, or about writing or being an author?
So it's definitely that idea creation thing that I find most exciting.
Yeah.
It's that moment sort of when you get the spark of an idea, and then maybe you'll have a character will come to you that will fit with that and the setting. And then when all those things come together and you're like, oh, great, this can be a story. It's quite magical. That for me is the most fun bit. And then I'm on the internet, and I'm like researching places, and where, what could this look like, and what could she look like, and who are the family, and it all, it just builds from there. And that's the bit I really love.
Yeah, I love that bit as well. When all the possibilities are there, all the ideas. And I think, like you mentioned earlier about when you're pantsing, you can kind of go down rabbit holes and go off on tangents. And like, I find that a challenge as well, to not do that, because especially in those early stages, like I just have so many ideas and I just want to do everything, and you have to like keep it to the heart of the story. But it's a really fun time when all the possibilities are there.
Well, and at that point, you can go off down rabbit holes, because you're not sure where you're going at that point. And so you can just be completely free, and, I can spend weeks just researching something completely random. But that's okay, because you're in the ideas creation stage.
Yeah.
And I love that you just sort of have that permission, because once you've got all the ideas in place, then you do have to start narrowing it down. Otherwise, you'd never spend any time writing.
Okay, and then so the final question is, what advice do you have for aspiring writers?
I think it is to make writer friends, and I think I've said that before, but I think the people that you meet along the way are like your writing family, and you're going to need their support, because there's going to be loads of rejection, and just days when it's just so super hard, but also there'll be the people who are there when it all goes right as well. I think that's probably my biggest tip. And the way to meet them is to, when you can, sort of do courses, take online lessons, get involved with writing organisations like the Society of Book Writers and Illustrators and Write Mentor, and you just meet all these like-minded people. I find that a bit amazing, that you suddenly just have this whole other group of people and you're all interested in the same thing. It's brilliant. It's enriched my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is that everyone is so supportive. We don't in my experience anyway, we don't feel like we're in competition with each other because readers can read multiple books. So it's not like if they're going to read mine, they're not going to read yours. So we're all cheering each other on and genuinely happy with each other in each other's successes. And that's just a really nice place to be.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been amazing chatting to you.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Alex. I have learned so much. I always find it completely fascinating getting an insight into how other writers work, and I'm sure our community will gain so much from what you've shared. So the Spooksmiths Investigate, The Cinder Man, is out in all good bookshops now. I honestly cannot recommend it highly enough. If you have children and they like funny, spooky mysteries, then they are going to love this. And if you write middle grade stories, then you should buy a copy and cover it in post-it notes and highlighters and see how it's done. You can also follow Alex on Instagram at Alex Atkinson Stories. If you enjoyed this interview, but there are questions that I didn't ask and you wish I had, put them in the comments below so I can be sure to ask them in future interviews. And if there was anything you found particularly useful or game-changing, please let us know that too. And it really does help us if you hit that like button. So if you enjoyed this interview, make sure you check out the other interviews in the series for more insights into the brains of successful authors. Until then, happy writing.